going to begin our presentation. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Interaction of Processes and its Importance to a Successful Audit webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski and I am the Technical Director of Perry Johnson Registrars. A couple of notes for everyone in attendance today. All participants are in mute. But we absolutely would like to get your questions answered today. So please use the question portion of the dashboard and we will address those questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Our topics for today. We're going to have a review of the background of where this requirement comes from and why it's taken on such importance in recent years. We're going to review the basis for requiring an identification of processes, both from ISO 9001-2008 as well as ISO 9001-2015. We will take a look at both a textbook definition of what is a process and also try to dig into some more common sense ways of understanding what a process is. We'll also have a discussion on what is not a process. And we'll be wrapping up today with some review of strategies that you can take to meet this requirement with minimal changes to your existing documentation. Now, this requirement, in terms of our more strict attention to it, actually goes back to 2014. PJR was given a mandate by our accreditation bodies, and we were told that we had to take a harder line in our assessment of client interaction of process, or IOP, documents. Now, this was based, for the most part, on a particular clause within ISO 17021. Now, that's, of course, the standard that PJR is held accountable to. It's now in its current 2015 revision. This requirement is unchanged. And it goes back to the 2011 version that we were originally held accountable to. And the clause that is of note here reads as follows. An audit program for the full certification cycle shall be developed to clearly identify the audit activity or activities required to demonstrate that a client's management system fulfills the requirements for certification. Now, the portion of that clause that is kind of the sticking point here as it pertains to IOP and identifying processes is this business of the client's management system. So to put this more plainly, we are required to adhere to whatever you present us as your interaction of processes. We have to build our audit program around that interaction of processes, and that extends to the audit plan, that extends to the audit report, the notes of the audit, and so forth. Now, if the IOP is not well conceived, if it does not reflect actual processes, it gets very difficult for the auditors to put their reports together, and it's very difficult for us as a certification body to substantiate that we have built an audit program around your management system. So accordingly, we have instructed our auditors to be vigilant about this and to issue nonconformances if they are working with a client that has an IOP that does not identify processes in an appropriate manner. And there are actually clauses from both versions of 9001 that put this across. In 9001-2008, there are three primary clauses. 4.1a states that an organization has to determine the processes that are needed and their application. 4.1b states that you have to determine a sequence and interaction of your processes, and in 4.2.2 it states that you have to have a quality manual that includes a description of the interaction that you've determined. Now, looking then at 9001-2015, the first two requirements are virtually the same. In 4.4.1, it states that you have to determine the processes that are needed for your system. You have to determine a sequence and interaction for those processes. And additionally, you have to maintain documented information supporting the operation of your processes. And having that documented interaction of processes is considered part of an appropriate fulfillment of that last clause, 4.4.2. Now, in terms of what is a process, let's begin with the definition that's provided in ISO 9000. ISO 9000, of course, is the fundamentals and vocabulary standard. Was reissued in September, the same day that ISO 9001-2015 was published. And here is what 9000-2015 specifically says about what is a process. A process is a set of interrelated or interacting activities that use inputs to deliver an intended result. Now, for me, the key words in this definition are interrelated or interacting activities. This establishes a key aspect of what is not a process, and that is a process is not a single step. So for example, if you have something like issue work order, well, issue work order by itself is most likely not a process. It's most likely part of a larger process. Not 100% that's going to be the case, but when you hear something like that or see something like that, you are saying to yourself, okay, is that a process or is that a step within a process? Now, I wanted to give everyone some general examples of what we see and what we see often in terms of identified processes. This bulleted list here, this was drawn from numerous audit reports, and this is not intended to identify anything mandatory or required. It's simply an identifying of what is common. So we see things like sales, we see things like purchasing, production, of course being a very broad term that might cover a number of different activities, shipping, design, production control. These are all areas that would, in nearly every case, would be inclusive of multiple steps, multiple persons, and so forth. Now, I do want to emphasize that in terms of naming the processes, that is absolutely at the discretion of the organization. And we're going to demonstrate that in a little bit when we dig further into the presentation. But a key takeaway from this slide here is your processes are whatever you think they are, whatever you want to call them, whatever names make sense to you. You don't have to use the terminology from the standard. You don't have to do anything that doesn't make sense to you in terms of understanding what your processes are. And it may be a very simple collection of processes. In my third bullet on this slide here, if your understanding of your system is that it's made up of 4 processes: sales, purchasing, production, support, it's absolutely acceptable for your IOP to reflect as much. Now, as I've already kind of tipped my hand, the key aspect of what is not a process is rooted in IOPs that identify steps and say, okay, we have these processes, but rather they are steps. So what do I mean by steps? What are some examples of steps? Things like create work order, issue schedule, complete work order, package product, ship product. Is it possible that each of these is an individual process? Maybe. Is it more likely that each of these is part of one or two larger processes? That's more likely. If we receive an interaction of processes document that has these items as processes, it's going to raise some questions. It's going to raise some concerns. Now, PJR obviously recognizes that for a majority of our clients, particularly our tenured clients, there's a lot of history with what you have as your IOP, and there was a lot of work that went into making the IOP in the first place. So we understand completely that it's a little bit disconcerting to be told that something that was accepted for years is now suddenly unacceptable. So we do want to share with you a strategy on keeping what you have but tweaking it so that this requirement is upheld appropriately. We're going to review a sample now of an interaction of processes document, and we're going to take it through a two-part improvement process. Now, I do want to note that this example is not reflective of any particular PJR client. It was created solely for the purpose of our presentation today. Okay, here's the raw interaction of processes. Now, the first thing that you will note right off the bat is that we have 12 boxes on here and 2 decision diamonds. Are we to imply from that that this company has 12 individual processes? And they have processes such as customer order received, sales and work orders issued, grinding cleanup. Are these truly individual processes in the spirit of the definition of processes? And remember, that definition was a set of interrelated or interacting activities with a shared result. So important to bear that in mind. Now, our first improvement that we're going to make to this is we're going to identify support processes. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the nature of this term support processes. One of the reasons that an IOP document, one of the additional reasons I should say, that an IOP document may get rejected is lack of identifying support processes. Now, what do I mean by support processes? These are items that are not core activities. These are things that typically support the quality system at large. These might be things like management review, internal auditing, training, corrective action, monitoring of metrics, things of this nature. If we jump back to our raw IOP, you'll note that what we've got here from start to finish is essentially the core activities. We don't really have those support activities on here in any way. Now, we presume that those support activities exist as part of the quality system, but we don't see them here. And again, that's something that can lead to concerns in the audit. So our first improvement, our first of 2 improvements to this IOP, is we're going to specifically identify the support processes. Okay, so now in the lower right-hand corner, we've added a large box simply called support processes. The support processes are all kind of listed in here in a jumble, and you'll note the disconnected arrows. And the intent behind this is to say we have a core cycle of activity here, and these items down here act in support of this core cycle. Every single step in this core cycle is held up and supported by these items here that we collectively call support processes. Now our second improvement is going to be to create a key for this IOP. And a key, of course, is a helpful way to identify what the processes are. Now this might be through numbering, this could be through alpha characters. For our demonstration today, we're going to use color coding. What this does, as I alluded to earlier, it enables us to keep this IOP as is, but it names what the processes are. So let's go ahead and add that improvement to this IOP. Okay, so now we've got support processes identified, and through color coding, we've identified 6 key processes, or 6 processes that make up this system. Sales order entry in orange, purchasing in green, production in yellow, shipping in purple, quality in red, and support in blue. And in this instance, okay, shipping and support were standalone processes already, but for every other process in the system, the other 4, there's a minimum of 3 pieces of this IOP that make up that process. Now we've really got something. We've accomplished a couple of key things here. We've kept the IOP exactly the way it was before, but we now know what the processes are, and we now have a proper identifying of support processes. This is an IOP that will absolutely be ready for audit assessment. Now obviously the method that we've just gone through is one method. We at PJR, we've seen over the years many different ways to approach the identifying of processes. So what we've done is we've pulled a couple of examples of how processes are defined and how we show interaction. These are all taken from existing companies, and permission was granted to use these examples. In our first example here, we have a top-down flow. We also have numbering on our processes, and we show how contracts starts us off, and then we follow a very natural progression ending with shipping, and then having our support activities off to the side here. And again, the disconnected arrows with the intent being that the items here support each of these steps, each of these processes here. Different, slightly busier model of process interaction. In this case, we have over here 6 core processes. And what the organization has done here is to show, again, kind of a natural flow of activity, but also the interactions between these processes. So for example, quoting flowing down into work orders and receiving, and down into overhaul, but overhaul also interacting with quoting. And then of course over here we have management related. We would presume that to be the support activities, and again the author of this IOP has tried to show us that these management related activities support the entirety of the quality system at large. This particular model that we're looking at right now is commonly referred to as swim lane because it does represent, it looks a little bit like swimming lanes in a pool. And in this particular model, we have 3 core processes: sales, purchasing, production, and then we have support processes. What this model does, as you can see, is it identifies the fact that sales and purchasing at least in the beginning, operate somewhat independently of each other. Where purchasing, in this case, is not dependent on sales. It's an inventory-driven purchasing system. But we do show everything kind of meeting up in the end here. Purchased items received, enabling issuance of work orders, and both of those items then leading to the beginning of the production process. And here we have kind of a four-part activity that culminates in shipping. And then again, down here are support processes providing general support to the system at large. This particular model identifies support processes by way of exemption, and it tells us that these 5 highlighted items, these are the core processes, and if it's not highlighted, it's to be considered support. So the other thing I really like about this example is you'll note the unique nature of the process names here. We have service exchange, repair and return, distribution. These are not what you would think of as your atypical processes, but again, that goes to the level of thought that went into this IOP when the organization put it together. Again, they approached it from the standpoint of what are our processes? What are the things that make up our quality system? So in conclusion, we want to ensure that you are getting a value-added audit, and we also want to make sure that you meet all applicable requirements. So we recognized that for this effort to be successful, we had to reach out to you, our valued clients, and try to help you understand where we were coming from and why we're being so strict on this requirement. So we do hope that this presentation has been helpful and that this will enable you to have a better understanding of what your processes are. I do thank you for your time and attention today. I'm going to go ahead and unlock the question portion of the dashboard. I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has this morning. Okay, since we seem to be without questions, I will wrap it up. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you for your time.